What if the deepest loneliness in your life has never come from being alone, but from spending years waiting for someone else to choose you? Many people carry a quiet hope that one day someone will finally see their worth. They wait to be appreciated, to be loved without conditions, and to hear the words, "You matter." While they wait, something far more painful begins to happen. They slowly stop choosing themselves. This kind of suffering is easy to hide. You can smile while carrying it. You can appear successful while quietly wondering why you never feel enough. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely unseen. The world often calls this loneliness, rejection, or insecurity. But Buddhist wisdom points towards something even deeper. It is the silent pain of abandoning your own heart while searching for a home in someone else's approval. From childhood, we are naturally drawn to acceptance. We want our parents to be proud of us, our friends to include us, and our teachers to recognize our efforts. As we grow older, that desire quietly changes form. We hope a partner will complete us, an employer will finally appreciate us, or strangers will admire who we have become. Without realizing it, we place our happiness into the hands of people who cannot possibly carry such a responsibility. Our peace becomes dependent on opinions that change from one moment to the next. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the deepest causes of suffering. Most people think attachment only refers to possessions or relationships. Yet attachment also appears in the desperate hope that another person will finally make us feel complete. We become attached to being accepted, attached to being admired, and attached to being chosen. The tragedy is not that we long for love, because love is one of life's greatest gifts. The tragedy is believing that our value depends on receiving it from someone else. Imagine standing beside a quiet lake at sunrise. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the mountains, the trees, and the endless sky with remarkable clarity. Now imagine throwing stone after stone into the lake, hoping each ripple will somehow create a better reflection. Instead, every ripple only distorts what was already beautiful. Many of us unknowingly do the same thing to our own hearts. We chase approval, compare ourselves to others, replay conversations, and search endlessly for signs that we are finally enough. Each anxious thought becomes another stone, and before long we can no longer see ourselves clearly. This is how self-abandonment quietly begins. It rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens every time you ignore your own needs to avoid disappointing someone else. It happens every time you remain silent because you fear rejection, apologize for simply being yourself, or convince yourself that another person's opinion matters more than your own inner voice. These moments seem small, but together they slowly pull you away from the person you were always meant to become. Perhaps the saddest part is that most people never realize it is happening. They believe they are simply being kind, generous, or selfless. In reality, they are gradually disappearing beneath the expectations of others. They spend years becoming the person everyone else wants, only to wake up one day feeling disconnected from themselves. The face in the mirror looks familiar, yet the heart quietly asks, "Where did I go?" Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle but life-changing reminder. Before anyone else can truly choose you, you must stop abandoning yourself. This is not selfishness. It is awakening. The Buddha never taught that lasting peace comes from convincing the world to love you. He taught that peace begins when you understand your own mind. Once you see clearly, you realize that no amount of praise can fill a heart that has forgotten itself. The search outside will never end until the journey inward begins. As you reflect tonight, ask yourself one simple question. If no one praised you, if no one rescued you, and if no one finally chose you, would you be willing to choose yourself? Do not rush to answer. Simply allow the question to rest quietly within your heart, because your answer may become the beginning of an entirely different life. In the next part of our journey, We will explore why the human mind becomes so dependent on other people's approval and how this invisible attachment quietly steals our freedom without us even realizing it. Number, Part 2. Why we keep seeking other people's approval. If choosing yourself is the beginning of inner peace, then one important question remains. Why is it so difficult? Why do so many people continue searching for acceptance from others, even after being disappointed time and time again? Buddhist wisdom teaches that the answer is not found in the people around us, but in the habits of the mind. Long before we begin seeking another person's approval, we have already forgotten something essential about ourselves. From the earliest years of life, we naturally learn to associate love with approval. A child feels safe when praised, encouraged, and accepted. There is nothing wrong with this. Love and encouragement help us grow. The difficulty begins when we unconsciously carry this pattern into adulthood. Instead of believing our worth is something that already exists, we begin believing it must be earned. We tell ourselves that if we work harder, become more attractive, achieve greater success, or make fewer mistakes, then people will finally choose us. Without realizing it, we spend years chasing a feeling that can never truly satisfy the heart. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the roots of suffering, and one of the strongest attachments we develop is the desire to be validated by others. We become attached to compliments because they temporarily silence our self-doubt. We become attached to attention because it briefly fills the emptiness we feel inside. We become attached to being needed because it gives us the illusion of security. Yet all of these experiences depend on circumstances beyond our control. People's feelings change, relationships evolve, expectations shift. What once brought approval may later invite criticism. If our peace depends upon something so uncertain, then our peace will always remain uncertain as well. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that someone else is constantly moving. Each time you try to see your reflection clearly, another person changes its position. Some lift it higher, others lower it, some turn it away completely. Before long, you begin believing there is something wrong with your reflection, when in reality the mirror itself has never been steady. This is what happens when we define ourselves through other people's opinions. We stop looking inward and spend our lives adjusting ourselves to reflections that were never stable in the first place. Many people do not realize how much of their daily life is shaped by this invisible search for approval. They hesitate before expressing an honest opinion because they fear being judged. They say yes when their heart wants to say no because they worry about disappointing someone. They remain in unhealthy relationships because being unwanted feels more frightening than being unhappy. They apologize for things that require no apology. They constantly wonder whether they are doing enough, giving enough, or being enough. These habits become so familiar that they begin to feel normal, yet each one quietly moves us further away from ourselves. There is a story often shared. As he walks through crowded streets, he becomes so focused on preventing a single drop from spilling that he never notices the beauty surrounding him. He misses the trees, the birds, the laughter of children, and the changing colors of the sky. His entire journey becomes controlled by fear. Many of us live in much the same way. We become so occupied with protecting other people's opinions of us that we stop experiencing our own lives. Instead of asking what brings us peace, we ask what will make others approve. Instead of listening to our own inner wisdom, we wait for permission from people who are searching for their own answers just as we are. The Buddha gently reminded his followers that no one else can give us lasting freedom, because freedom begins with understanding the mind. The moment you recognize that your value does not rise or fall with another person's opinion, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop performing for acceptance. You stop exhausting yourself trying to become everything for everyone. You begin making choices based on wisdom rather than fear. Slowly, the heart grows quieter because it is no longer begging the world to confirm what it already knows. Perhaps the greatest illusion is believing that if enough people choose us, we will finally choose ourselves. Yet experience teaches the opposite. There are people admired by millions who still feel empty inside. There are people surrounded by love who still believe they are unworthy. External approval can comfort the mind for a moment, but it cannot heal a heart that has forgotten its own value. That healing begins only when we stop searching outside for what has always existed within. As you reflect on these words, ask yourself gently, how many of my choices have been guided by the fear of not being accepted? There is no need for guilt or regret. Awareness itself is the first step toward freedom. Once you recognize the invisible chains, you are already beginning to loosen them. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the quiet moment when people begin abandoning themselves, often believing they are simply trying to be loved, and discover how Buddhist wisdom helps us return to the person we were before fear took control. No one wakes up one morning and decides to lose themselves. It happens so quietly that, for a long time, we mistake it for love, kindness, or maturity. We tell ourselves we are simply being understanding. We say we are making sacrifices for the people we care about. We convince ourselves that keeping the peace is more important than speaking the truth. Yet with every small compromise made against our own heart, we move one step further away from who we truly are. Self-abandonment rarely begins with a dramatic event. It begins with the smallest decisions. You ignore your own feelings because someone else's emotions seem more important. You stay silent when something hurts because you fear creating conflict. You pretend to agree when your heart quietly disagrees. At first, these choices appear harmless. They even seem generous. But over time, they become habits, and habits slowly become identity. One day you realize that you have spent so many years becoming what everyone else wanted that you no longer remember what you truly wanted for yourself. The Buddha often reminded his followers that suffering grows whenever we lose awareness of our own minds. When we stop listening to the quiet wisdom within us, we begin living according to the expectations of the world instead. The world tells us to earn approval, avoid rejection, and fit into whatever shape makes us easier to accept. But the more we shape ourselves to satisfy everyone else, the more disconnected we become from our own nature. Imagine a beautiful tree growing deep within a forest. Every day, people walk past and begin trimming its branches to match their personal preferences. One person wants it shorter, another wants it wider. Someone else wishes it looked like the tree beside it. Year after year, the tree is cut and reshaped until it no longer resembles the seed from which it first grew. Many people live exactly this way. They allow countless opinions, expectations, and fears to shape their lives until they can no longer recognize the person standing in the mirror. Perhaps you have experienced this without realizing it. Maybe you stayed in a relationship long after your heart knew it was over, because being alone felt more frightening than being unhappy. Maybe you accepted constant disrespect because you believed asking for better would cause people to leave. Maybe you worked tirelessly to prove your worth, hoping that one more achievement would finally make you feel enough. Each decision may have seemed reasonable at the time, yet together they carried the same quiet message: my needs matter less than everyone else's. This is one of the most painful forms of self-abandonment because it happens with good intentions. You are not trying to harm yourself. You are simply trying to avoid losing the people you love. Yet Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us that a relationship built upon abandoning yourself can never bring lasting peace. Every time you betray your own truth to preserve someone else's comfort, you create a quiet conflict within your own heart. The world may never notice it, but you will feel it every day. There is an old image often used in Buddhist teachings of a traveler carrying a lantern through the darkness. The lantern represents awareness. As long as the traveler keeps the light close, The path remains visible, even if only a few steps ahead. But imagine the traveler giving that lantern to someone else and expecting them to lead the way forever. Eventually, the traveler can no longer see where they are going because they have surrendered the very light meant to guide them. In much the same way, every time you rely completely on another person's approval to determine your direction, you hand them your inner lantern. Your path becomes uncertain, not because the road has disappeared, but because you have stopped trusting your own light. Choosing yourself does not mean rejecting others. It does not mean becoming selfish, distant, or uncaring. Buddhist compassion has never asked us to love ourselves instead of others. It teaches us to love ourselves so that we may love others without losing ourselves in the process. There is a profound difference between giving from a full heart and giving because you are afraid people will leave if you stop. Take a quiet moment to reflect on your own life. Are there places where you have remained silent, even though your heart longed to speak? Are there dreams you abandoned because someone convinced you they were unrealistic? Have you been carrying responsibilities that were never truly yours, simply because saying no felt uncomfortable? These questions are not meant to create guilt. They are invitations to awareness. The moment you see where you have been abandoning yourself is the moment you begin finding your way back. In the next part of our journey, we will discover what Buddhist wisdom teaches about true self-worth and why your value has never depended on another person's ability to recognize it. Once this truth becomes clear, you will no longer wait for the world to tell you who you are, because you will finally remember it for yourself. If there is one lesson that quietly runs through all of Buddhist wisdom, it is this: your value has never depended on whether another person recognizes it. Yet this is one of the hardest truths for the human mind to accept. We live in a world that constantly measures success through comparison, popularity, achievement, and approval. From the moment we are young, we are taught to seek recognition. We celebrate the highest grades, the loudest applause, the greatest accomplishments, and the largest audiences. Slowly, we begin believing that our worth grows only when someone else confirms it. But the Buddha offered a completely different way of seeing ourselves. He never taught his followers to search for their value in the changing opinions of other people. Instead, he encouraged them to look inward with honesty, awareness, and compassion. Why? Because everything outside of us is constantly changing. Relationships change, careers change, beauty changes, health changes. Even the people who love us today cannot remain beside us forever. If we build our identity upon things that are temporary, then our sense of self will always feel fragile. Every loss will seem like proof that we are no longer enough. True self-worth is different. It does not depend on success. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that every human being possesses an inherent dignity simply because they are alive. Beneath every fear, every mistake, and every painful memory, there is an awareness that remains untouched. That awareness is calm, compassionate, and whole. It has always been there, patiently waiting beneath the noise of the mind. Imagine the sky on a cloudy afternoon. Thick grey clouds cover every part of it, making it seem as though the sun has disappeared. Yet the sun has not gone anywhere. It continues shining exactly as it always has. The clouds only prevent us from seeing its light. In much the same way, your true worth never disappears because of rejection, failure, or disappointment. Fear, self-doubt, and painful experiences may temporarily hide it, but they cannot destroy it. The light remains, even when the mind forgets it is there. Many people spend years trying to become worthy of love, not realizing they have been worthy from the very beginning. They believe they must first heal completely before accepting themselves. They believe they must become more successful before feeling confident. They believe they must earn kindness through perfection. This endless pursuit creates exhaustion because the finish line keeps moving. Every achievement brings temporary satisfaction, followed by another expectation, another goal, another reason to believe they are still not enough. The Buddha gently invited people to step off this endless path. Instead of asking, "How can I become worthy?" he encouraged a far more powerful question. What prevents me from seeing the worth that is already here? That single shift changes everything. The journey is no longer about becoming someone new. It becomes a journey of remembering who you have always been beneath fear, attachment, and self-judgment. One of the most beautiful symbols in Buddhism is the lotus flower. It grows in muddy water, surrounded by conditions that appear anything but beautiful. Yet when it finally blossoms, no trace of the mud can be found upon its petals. The lotus does not wait for perfect conditions before revealing its beauty. It grows through difficulty rather than around it. In the same way, your struggles do not diminish your value. They become part of the path that helps wisdom, compassion, and resilience emerge. Perhaps you have spent years believing that your mistakes define you. Perhaps rejection convinced you that you were unworthy of love. Perhaps someone's inability to appreciate you slowly became your own opinion of yourself. If so, remember this simple truth. Another person's inability to recognize your value has never been evidence that your value does not exist. A closed eye cannot see the sunrise, but the sunrise still fills the sky with light. Likewise, someone else's misunderstanding of you can never change who you truly are. This realization is deeply liberating because it allows you to stop proving yourself. You no longer need to convince everyone to understand you. You no longer need constant praise to feel complete. You no longer need to exhaust yourself chasing acceptance that may never come. Instead, you begin living from a quieter place. You choose kindness because it reflects your values, not because it earns approval. You pursue your purpose because it brings meaning, not because it impresses others. You care for yourself because your life has value, even on the days when no one else seems to notice. As you sit with these teachings, ask yourself one gentle question. If your worth has never depended on another person's opinion, what would change about the way you live tomorrow? Perhaps you would speak more honestly. Perhaps you would stop chasing relationships that leave you feeling invisible. Perhaps you would finally give yourself the same compassion you have so freely offered to everyone else. In the next part of our journey, we will explore how letting go of the need to be chosen becomes one of the greatest acts of freedom. For it is only when we stop begging the world for permission to be enough that we finally discover the peace that has always been waiting within us. Once you begin recognizing that your worth has never depended on another person's approval, another question naturally arises. If my value has always been within me, why do I still feel the need to be chosen? Why does rejection hurt so deeply? Why do I keep hoping that one more person will finally give me the love and acceptance I have been searching for? Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of our suffering comes not from rejection itself, but from our attachment to being accepted. We believe that if someone chooses us, our life will finally feel complete. We imagine that love from another person will silence our doubts, heal our loneliness, and erase the fear of not being enough. Yet experience often tells a different story. Many people receive the love they longed for and still feel insecure. Others achieve recognition and success, yet continue questioning their own value. This is because no one else can permanently quiet a mind that has not yet learned to rest within itself. Imagine holding a handful of sand at the beach. If you keep your hand open, the sand rests naturally in your palm. But the harder you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Relationships often follow the same quiet principle. The more desperately we cling to being chosen, the more fear enters our hearts. We begin overthinking every conversation, searching for hidden meanings in simple words, and trying to become whoever we think another person wants us to be. Instead of experiencing love freely, we experience constant anxiety about losing it. The Buddha often spoke of non-attachment, a teaching that is frequently misunderstood. Non-attachment does not mean refusing to love. It does not mean becoming distant or emotionally cold. It means loving without making another person responsible for your inner peace. It means appreciating relationships while understanding that your happiness cannot depend entirely upon them. This kind of love is calmer, wiser, and far more enduring because it is rooted in freedom rather than fear. Think of a bird resting on the branch of a tree. The bird is peaceful, not because it completely trusts the branch, but because it trusts its own wings. If the branch bends or breaks, it knows it can still fly. Many of us live the opposite way. We place all of our trust in the branch. We depend entirely on another person's attention, affection, or presence. When circumstances change, we feel as though our entire world has collapsed. Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us to strengthen our wings instead of clinging more tightly to the branch. The stronger your inner foundation becomes, the less fearful you are of life's inevitable changes. One of the quietest forms of freedom appears the moment you stop asking, "Why didn't they choose me?" and begin asking, "Why have I been waiting for someone else to decide my worth?" That single shift changes everything. Your energy no longer flows toward chasing people who cannot see your value. Instead, it begins flowing toward becoming more present, more compassionate, and more authentic. You stop performing for acceptance because you realize that genuine connection never requires pretending to be someone you are not. There is another beautiful lesson found in nature. The sun rises every morning without asking the world for permission to shine. It does not become brighter because people admire it, nor does it disappear because someone fails to notice its light. It simply fulfills its purpose. Human beings often forget this. We dim our light to avoid making others uncomfortable. We silence our voice to prevent disagreement. We hide our true selves in the hope of being accepted. Yet the more we hide, the further we move from the peace we seek. Letting go of the need to be chosen does not mean closing your heart to love. On the contrary, it allows you to love more deeply because your relationships are no longer built upon fear. You can appreciate people without clinging to them. You can enjoy their presence without believing that your happiness disappears when they leave. You can celebrate love without making it the measure of your own worth. Perhaps someone you deeply cared for walked away. Perhaps they failed to recognize your kindness or your loyalty. Perhaps they chose a different path, leaving you wondering what you lacked. Buddhist wisdom invites you to consider another possibility. Their decision may say far more about their own journey than it does about your value. Not every person is meant to remain in your life forever. Some arrive to teach you, some arrive to challenge you, and some quietly leave, so you can finally discover the strength that was waiting within you all along. As you reflect on these words, ask yourself gently, what would my life feel like if I stopped waiting to be chosen? Sit with that question for a moment. You may discover that the freedom you have been seeking has never depended on another person's decision. It has been patiently waiting for your own. In the next part of our journey, we will explore what it truly means to choose yourself first, and why this simple act is one of the greatest expressions of wisdom, courage, and compassion found in Buddhist teaching. For many people, the idea of choosing themselves feels uncomfortable. Almost immediately, the mind whispers, "Isn't that selfish?" We have spent so many years believing that putting others first is always the right thing to do that we rarely stop to ask a more important question. How can you continue giving love, patience, and compassion to others if you have completely neglected your own heart? Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle answer. Choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of responsibility. Before you can bring peace into the lives of others, you must first cultivate peace within yourself. A heart that is constantly exhausted from seeking approval cannot give freely. It gives out of fear. It gives to avoid rejection. It gives because it hopes that, in return, someone will finally provide the love it has never learned to offer itself. Imagine trying to fill another person's cup while your own is completely empty. No matter how generous your intentions may be, eventually there is nothing left to give. Many people spend years living exactly this way. They become everyone's source of comfort while quietly carrying unbearable loneliness. They listen to everyone else's problems but never speak about their own. They celebrate other people's happiness while silently wondering why no one notices their pain. From the outside, they appear strong and selfless. Inside, they feel invisible. The Buddha never encouraged this kind of sacrifice. Compassion begins with oneself. If you cannot treat your own suffering with kindness, it becomes very difficult to offer genuine kindness to anyone else. This is why self-compassion is not separate from compassion toward others. They grow from the same source. The more gently you learn to treat your own heart, the more naturally that gentleness flows toward the people around you. Choosing yourself often begins with something very simple. It begins by listening. Many of us have become experts at listening to everyone except ourselves. We notice when others are tired, but ignore our own exhaustion. We recognize when someone else needs rest, but convince ourselves to keep pushing forward. We know exactly how to comfort a friend, yet speak harshly to ourselves over the smallest mistake. Slowly, we become disconnected from our own needs because we have trained ourselves to believe they matter less. There is a quiet lesson in nature that reflects this truth. Before a tree produces fruit, it first strengthens its roots. It does not apologize for drawing water from the earth or reaching toward the sunlight. It understands that healthy roots are not selfish. They are essential. Without them, the branches cannot grow, the leaves cannot flourish, and the fruit can never appear. Human beings are no different. Caring for your own mind is not taking something away from others. It is creating the foundation that allows you to love them more fully. One of the most powerful ways to choose yourself is by learning to set healthy boundaries. Many people fear boundaries because they worry they will disappoint someone. Yet boundaries are not walls that push people away. They are quiet expressions of self-respect. They remind others, and yourself, that your time, energy, and emotional well-being also have value. Think of a peaceful garden surrounded by a simple wooden fence. The fence is not there because the garden hates the outside world. It exists so the flowers have a chance to grow without being constantly trampled. In the same way, healthy boundaries protect your inner peace. They allow kindness to flourish without becoming exhaustion. They allow generosity without resentment. They allow love without losing yourself in the process. There will always be people who become uncomfortable when you begin choosing yourself. They were accustomed to the version of you that always said yes, always remained available, and never questioned their expectations. When you begin honoring your own needs, some relationships may change. This can feel painful, but Buddhist wisdom reminds us that not every relationship is meant to remain unchanged forever. Those who genuinely care for you will eventually respect the healthier version of yourself. Those who only valued your willingness to sacrifice yourself may quietly drift away. Do not fear this change. Every ending creates space for something more authentic. Every boundary you establish is also an invitation for more honest relationships to enter your life. You are no longer asking people to love a version of yourself created by fear. You are allowing them to know the person who has finally begun living with honesty and awareness. As you reflect today, ask yourself one gentle question. If I treated myself with the same patience, kindness, and understanding that I so freely offer others, how different would my life become? Perhaps that single question marks the beginning of a new relationship with yourself, one built not upon guilt or fear, but upon quiet compassion. In the next part of our journey, we will explore why chasing people who cannot recognize your worth only deepens suffering, and how Buddhist wisdom teaches us to walk away with peace instead of resentment. One of the most liberating lessons in Buddhist wisdom is also one of the most difficult to accept. Not everyone is meant to understand you, appreciate you, or remain in your life forever. The mind resists this truth because it longs for certainty. It wants every relationship to last, every effort to be recognized, and every act of kindness to be returned. But life has never promised any of these things. Suffering begins when we insist that reality should be different from what it is. Many people spend years chasing those who have already decided to walk away. They replay old conversations, wondering what they could have said differently. They blame themselves for someone else's distance. They search endlessly for the one mistake that explains why they were not chosen. Yet in doing so, they overlook a simple truth. A person who truly sees your value should never require you to constantly prove it. The Buddha taught that attachment clouds our ability to see clearly. When we become attached to a particular person or outcome, we stop responding to reality and begin responding to our expectations. We fall in love with the version of someone we hope they will become, rather than accepting who they truly are. We cling to memories instead of noticing the present. We continue watering a tree that has long since stopped growing, hoping that one more effort will somehow bring it back to life. Imagine standing beside a river, watching the current carry fallen leaves downstream. You reach into the water and grasp one leaf, refusing to let it go. The stronger the current becomes, the tighter you hold on. Before long, your hand grows tired, your body begins to ache, and the simple beauty of the flowing river disappears from your awareness. The suffering is not created by the river. It is created by your refusal to release what was already moving away. Life often works in exactly the same way. Some people are meant to stay only for a season. Holding on to them long after their time has passed only creates unnecessary pain. This does not mean that love itself is a mistake. Love is one of the greatest expressions of the human heart. But there is a profound difference between loving someone and chasing someone. Love allows freedom. Chasing is driven by fear. Love says, "I wish you well, whether our paths continue together or not." Fear says, "I cannot be happy unless you choose me." Buddhist wisdom gently encourages us to recognize the difference, because only one of these paths leads to peace. There is another quiet danger in chasing people who cannot see your worth. Every step you take towards someone who continually rejects your value is often a step away from yourself. You begin questioning your own judgment. You lower your standards. You ignore your intuition. You accept treatment that you would never encourage someone you love to tolerate. Little by little, you convince yourself that enduring disappointment is the price of being loved. Yet genuine love has never required you to abandon your dignity. Think of a gardener caring for a beautiful garden. Some plants flourish with sunlight and water. Others, despite every effort, simply cannot survive in that particular soil. A wise gardener does not spend every day mourning the plants that refuse to grow. Instead, they continue nurturing the flowers that are ready to bloom. In the same way, your energy is precious. Every moment spent chasing those who cannot appreciate your heart is a moment taken away from the relationships, dreams, and opportunities that are waiting to flourish in your life. Perhaps someone failed to recognize your kindness. Perhaps they walked away without explanation. Perhaps they chose another path after you had given them your trust. These experiences can leave deep wounds, but they do not define your worth. They reveal only that not every journey is meant to be shared forever. Sometimes a person's departure is not a punishment. It is life's quiet invitation to stop searching for your value where it was never meant to be found. As you continue your own path, remember this gentle truth. You do not need to convince the right people to see your light. Those who are meant to walk beside you will recognize it without endless persuasion. They may not be perfect, and neither will you, but your relationship will not depend on constantly proving that you deserve to be there. Tonight, Ask yourself one honest question. Who have you been chasing that no longer brings peace to your heart? Then ask another question that is even more important. What beautiful parts of your own life have been waiting patiently while your attention remained fixed on someone who could never truly choose you? In the next part of our journey, we will discover the quiet freedom that comes from learning to walk alone. For when you are no longer afraid of your own company, you become impossible to control through the fear of being abandoned. For many people, the greatest fear is not failure. It is being alone. The mind often tells us that if we are alone, we must have done something wrong. We assume that solitude is proof that we are unworthy, forgotten, or unloved. Yet Buddhist wisdom offers a completely different perspective. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness comes from feeling disconnected from yourself, while solitude can become one of the most peaceful places where you finally begin to meet yourself. The Buddha spent long periods in silence, not because he rejected the world, but because he understood that a restless mind cannot hear the quiet voice of wisdom. In today's world, silence has become unfamiliar. We constantly surround ourselves with conversations, notifications, entertainment, and endless distractions. Many people fear sitting alone with their own thoughts because they worry about what they might discover. Yet it is often in those quiet moments that the deepest healing begins. Imagine a lake after a powerful storm. The water is muddy and the surface is covered with waves. If someone asked you to find your reflection in that moment, it would be impossible. But if you simply wait without disturbing the water, the mud slowly settles, the waves become still, and the reflection appears naturally. The lake does not struggle to become clear. It simply stops being disturbed. The human mind works in much the same way. We spend so much time chasing approval, replaying conversations, and worrying about what others think that our inner world rarely has the opportunity to become still. Solitude allows the mind to settle, revealing a clarity that has always been there beneath the noise. Many people avoid being alone because they believe happiness only exists in the presence of others. They move from one relationship to another, not because each relationship is healthy, but because they cannot bear the silence that follows its ending. They fill every empty space with activity, hoping to escape the uncomfortable feeling of facing themselves. Yet no matter how many people surround you, you can never escape your own mind. Wherever you go, you bring yourself with you. This is why Buddhist wisdom encourages us to become a friend to ourselves before seeking comfort elsewhere. If your own company feels unbearable, no relationship will permanently remove that discomfort. Another person may distract you for a while, but they cannot heal the relationship you have with your own heart. That healing begins only when you learn to sit peacefully with yourself, without judgment, without distraction, and without constantly wishing to be somewhere else. There is a quiet strength that develops when you no longer fear walking alone. You stop making desperate decisions simply to avoid loneliness. You become more patient when choosing relationships because you are no longer searching for someone to rescue you from yourself. You begin appreciating people for who they are, rather than clinging to them out of fear. Love becomes a choice instead of a necessity. Connection becomes a gift instead of a dependency. Think of a mountain standing peacefully beneath the changing sky. Through every season, it remains grounded. Storms come and go. Clouds gather and disappear. Snow falls, then melts beneath the warmth of spring. Yet the mountain does not chase the sunshine or fear the rain. It remains exactly where it belongs. Buddhist wisdom invites us to cultivate the same inner stability. When your peace comes from within, the changing circumstances of life no longer determine your happiness. This does not mean isolating yourself from the world. Human connection is beautiful and deeply meaningful. The difference is that you no longer seek relationships to complete you. Instead, you enter them already feeling whole. You share your life because you choose to, not because you believe your identity depends upon another person's presence. Perhaps there was a time when being alone felt like failure. Perhaps silence reminded you of rejection or loss. If so, consider looking at solitude through a different lens. What if these quiet moments are not punishments, but invitations? What if life has created this space so you can rediscover the person who has been waiting patiently beneath years of expectations and fear? Sometimes the greatest relationship you will ever build is the one you create with yourself. As you reflect on this teaching, ask yourself one gentle question. If you were completely at peace with your own company, how would your relationships change? You might discover that you would love more freely, forgive more easily, and stop chasing people who cannot see your worth. You would no longer fear being left behind because you would know that you could never truly lose the one person who matters most to you. In the final part of our journey, we will discover one of the most profound truths in Buddhist wisdom. The person you have been waiting for your entire life has never been someone else. It has always been you. That realization has the power to transform not only the way you see yourself, but the way you walk through every moment that follows. There comes a quiet moment in every healing journey when the heart grows tired of searching. After years of seeking approval, chasing acceptance, and hoping someone else will finally fill the emptiness within, something begins to change. The questions that once dominated your mind slowly lose their power. Instead of asking, "Who will choose me?" you begin asking a far more meaningful question. Why have I spent so many years waiting for someone else to give me what I have always been capable of giving myself? This is one of the most transformative moments in Buddhist practice. It is the moment you stop looking outward for rescue and begin turning inward with compassion. The Buddha repeatedly encouraged his followers to become a light unto themselves. This teaching does not suggest that we should reject the support or kindness of others. Rather, it reminds us that lasting peace cannot depend upon circumstances beyond our control. No one else can permanently quiet your fears, heal your self-doubt, or convince you that you are worthy if you have not yet discovered those truths within yourself. For much of life, we wait. We wait for the perfect relationship, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect moment when everything will finally make sense. We tell ourselves that happiness is just beyond the next achievement or the next chapter of our lives. Yet every time we reach one destination, another expectation quietly takes its place. The mind continues searching because it believes fulfillment exists somewhere outside the present moment. Buddhist wisdom gently invites us to stop running and simply look within. What if the peace you have been seeking has never been hidden? What if it has been quietly waiting beneath years of fear, comparison, and attachment? Just as the moon remains unchanged behind passing clouds, your true nature has remained untouched beneath every disappointment you have experienced. The clouds come and go, but the moon continues shining. Think about someone you deeply love. Imagine how patiently you would speak to them after they made a mistake. You would remind them that one failure does not define their future. You would encourage them to begin again. You would never tell them they were unworthy simply because life had become difficult. Yet how often do you offer yourself the same kindness? Many people speak to themselves with a harshness they would never direct toward another human being. They replay every mistake, magnify every weakness, and overlook every quiet victory. In doing so, they become their own greatest source of suffering. The practice of choosing yourself begins with changing this relationship. It begins when you stop treating yourself as an enemy who must be fixed and start treating yourself as a lifelong companion deserving of patience and understanding. Self-compassion is not pretending that everything is perfect. It is acknowledging your imperfections without allowing them to define your identity. It is recognizing that every human being stumbles, suffers, and learns. You are not separate from that shared experience. You are part of it. There is a beautiful image in nature that reflects this truth. Consider a seed resting beneath the soil. From above, nothing appears to be happening. The earth is dark, silent, and still. Yet beneath the surface, life is quietly unfolding. Roots are growing before the first leaves ever appear. If someone judged the seed only by what they could immediately see, they might believe nothing was changing. In reality, the most important transformation is happening where no one can observe it. Your own healing often follows the same path. The greatest changes are usually invisible at first. Perhaps you now speak to yourself with a little more kindness. Perhaps you no longer chase every person who walks away. Perhaps you are learning to enjoy moments of silence without feeling afraid. These changes may seem small, but they are the roots of a new life. With patience, they will become visible in every relationship, every decision, and every step you take. The person you have been waiting for has never been someone who would arrive one day and magically complete you. It has always been the wiser, calmer, more compassionate version of yourself that has patiently waited beneath years of fear. Every lesson you have experienced, every heartbreak you have survived, and every moment of loneliness has quietly guided you back toward this truth. You were never broken beyond repair. You were simply disconnected from the quiet wisdom that has always existed within your own heart. As this realization begins to settle within you, notice how much lighter life becomes. You no longer carry the impossible burden of convincing everyone to understand you. You no longer measure your value by the number of people who stay. Instead, you begin walking through life with a quiet confidence that cannot be given or taken away by anyone else. That confidence is not arrogance, it is peace. It is the calm understanding that your worth has never depended on being chosen because you have finally learned to choose yourself. In the final part of our journey, we will bring together everything we have explored. You will discover why the moment you choose yourself is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a life guided by wisdom, compassion, and the unshakable peace that Buddhist teachings have pointed toward for centuries. As we come to the end of this journey, take a slow, gentle breath. There is no need to rush. For the past few moments, we have explored one simple yet life-changing truth through the lens of Buddhist wisdom. The peace you have been searching for has never depended on someone else choosing you. It has always begun the moment you decide to choose yourself. Perhaps these teachings have reminded you of moments when you felt invisible, times when you questioned your worth because someone failed to appreciate your kindness, times when you remained in relationships that slowly drained your spirit because being alone seemed more frightening than being unloved. Or perhaps you have spent years trying to become everything for everyone, hoping that if you were patient enough, generous enough, or successful enough, someone would finally make you feel complete. If any of this feels familiar, know that you are not alone. Every human heart longs to belong. Every person hopes to be seen, understood, and accepted. The Buddha never denied these natural desires. Instead, he gently showed us why depending on them for our happiness inevitably leads to suffering. The world is constantly changing. People arrive and leave. Feelings rise and fall. Circumstances transform in ways we cannot predict. If our peace depends entirely on what is constantly changing, then peace itself will always feel uncertain. Throughout this reflection, we discovered that choosing yourself is not an act of pride. It is an act of awakening. It means listening to your own heart without waiting for permission. It means speaking to yourself with the same compassion you offer others. It means setting healthy boundaries without guilt, walking away from relationships that repeatedly diminish your spirit, and trusting that your worth has never been determined by another person's ability to recognize it. The beautiful truth is that you do not need to become a different person to deserve peace. You do not need to erase every mistake from your past or prove yourself through endless achievements. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that beneath fear, disappointment, and self-doubt, there has always been a quiet awareness untouched by any rejection. That awareness is your true nature. It has remained with you through every chapter of your life, patiently waiting for you to remember it. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest just before sunrise. The path ahead disappears into the morning mist. You cannot see every step that lies before you, yet the first rays of sunlight begin to illuminate the ground beneath your feet. Life often unfolds in exactly this way. We do not receive certainty before we begin walking. We receive clarity only after taking the next mindful step. Choosing yourself is that first step. You do not need to know exactly where it will lead. You simply need the courage to begin. There will still be difficult days. There will be moments when old habits return, and your mind once again seeks approval from people who cannot give you lasting peace. There will be times when rejection hurts or loneliness feels heavy. These moments do not mean you have failed. They simply remind you that healing is not a destination, but a lifelong practice. Each time you notice yourself searching outside for your worth, gently return to yourself without judgment. Like returning to the breath during meditation, every return strengthens your awareness. Remember the lessons we have shared. Your worth does not increase because someone chooses you, and it does not disappear because someone walks away. You do not have to chase those who cannot recognize your value. You do not have to abandon your own heart to earn a place in someone else's life. The love you have been searching for becomes far more peaceful when it grows from a heart that already knows it is enough. Perhaps the greatest gift of choosing yourself is that it transforms every relationship you will ever have. You no longer love from fear. You love from freedom. You no longer remain where you are constantly diminished. You remain where kindness, honesty, and mutual respect can grow naturally. You stop asking people to complete you because you have discovered that wholeness was never something another person could provide. As you leave this reflection, carry one simple truth with you. Every morning offers another opportunity to choose yourself again, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of awareness. Speak kindly to yourself. Protect your peace. Honor your values. Rest when you are tired. Forgive yourself when you stumble. Trust your own path, even when it looks different from everyone else's. These quiet choices, repeated day after day, slowly become the foundation of a peaceful life. Thank you for spending this time with Silent Wisdom. If these Buddhist teachings have brought even a little more clarity to your heart, consider subscribing and returning whenever you need a moment of stillness in a noisy world. Until we meet again, may you walk through life with greater awareness, deeper compassion, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your value has never depended on being chosen by someone else. The moment you choose yourself is the moment your journey toward lasting inner peace truly begins.